In today's Let's Talk Jinx, we're going to be talking about the patch 10.23 notes. It's a really long one, so buckle up for a long episode. I'll still try and condense this down, because usually we're just going to be talking about the things that are going to affect like Jinx and AD carries and stuff like that. But there is some stuff across the whole patch worth at least touching up on. Like, for example, the fact that there are a lot of item changes to both new items that exist and have been on the PvE for a while with a few tweaks called Mythic items, which the very short version of that would be every class of champion now has 3 or more items. You can only build 1 at a time, but these 3 items or more could be very powerful on basically any champion in that role. So if you're watching this as a Jinx player, for example, and you're under the impression that Jinx is like the weakest AD carry, well, one of these 3 items could actually make Jinx a pretty good AD carry, right? That's the idea. It's like everybody can maybe be pretty good in the preseason until, of course, the meta develops and you find out like what's actually like the best and stuff like that. But for a bit, it's going to be like the Wild West, I've heard people describe it, of League of Legends. And it'll actually be a pretty exciting time because everything feels like it could come out on top, at least again until the meta is figured out. There's also a lot of old items that have been updated or returned to the game, like Force of Nature and stuff like that. The shop has been updated as well to try and give you an idea of what you should be building against certain champions and things like that, which is actually what this is down here. So like you'll go in, it'll show you the items, it'll show you like what composition you're playing against, what that's good against. So in this particular game, you're dealing with like Senna, Cassiopeia, and Camille. These are some items as a mage you could build. And things like that that are going to be pretty interesting to talk about in general. But if we do talk about champion specific stuff, we'd have to go over to the side here and drop down to, I believe, preseason champion adjustments, because there were no changes directly to Jinx outside of the items, which we're going to be talking about last. Let's knock out the champions first this time. Caitlyn, headshot damage from crit chance decreased. So it looks like they're decreasing her crit chance on her headshot procs, that is. It's going down. And the math behind it, they're saying their words here, the math behind this is super gross, but the gist of it is that the headshot's bonus damage scales off of Infinity Edge's crit damage in a way that completely ignored preseason systematic crit damage reduction. Because that is something that it was done, is crit kind of got reduced in terms of its like reduction, as in you need like 5 items to get to a 100% crit chance. Infinity Edge's crit chance is going down from 200% like to 175%, but I think there's like a scaling aspect of it. Again, we'll touch on that in a little bit. But for Caitlyn specifically, basically she came out on the other side of this still too powerful. She would have been actually too strong when, again, it's supposed to be a bit more of an even playing field and chaos that is the preseason. So that's why they're doing this change. So in the laning phase, if you're playing against this, like as a Jinx or something, just note that the headshot damage from crit chance will be decreased, which off the level 1 through 6, where it's just the laning phase, you probably just have Adorn shield and stuff like that as it is anyways, probably going to be irrelevant. But if the laning phase, lasts past that, especially past like say level 7 that you have down here, and she may be back, since she does, instead of going for like a BF sword, if she goes for like a Zeal item, like the Zeal part of it, and she has crit, it will be reduced damage. So the trading will be a little bit weaker on her part. If it's a good Caitlyn that kind of dances in and out the brush to get the headshot proc like every other auto attack or whatever, it's not going to matter that much. If you're getting beat up on a Caitlyn, it's not your day basically, and you want to probably farm the lane anyways. But in case it comes down to that, it's something maybe to note. If you're playing that, if for some reason you're playing that matchup right now very scared and cautiously because that's what's been beating you up, it's going to beat you up a little less. So there you go. Jhin is another one where the passive crit damage reduction and crit chance is being decreased, and it's kind of along the same lines where like they still want Jin's crits to feel noticeably different from his non-crits, but they're nerfing the AD that he gets in the crit chance instead of nerfing the crit damage. So in other words, the crit damage reduction is going down from 25% and 150% AD to 14%, but the crits still deal 150 AD. They want the crits to still crit, but they want the other damage to not crit. The crit chance to AD conversion is going down from 40% to 30%. That's not a 4. That is not a 4. That's a crime. Jhin is literally unplayable. And if you're playing against them as Jinx, because now Jhin is unplayable, because this is unplayable right here, you automatically now win the lane. But on a little bit more of a serious note, right? The reduction is not for the crits. So if he's still 4th shotting you with a crit, it's gonna hurt. But if he's not 4th shotting you, if I'm understanding this right, the 25% here, like the 80 and stuff, and that's gonna be down to like 14%. Even if it is the crit, even if I'm not interpreting this is a drop of 11% damage. In the laning phase, that could be everything for those early game trades, right? So you actually might have a little bit more of a better time laning against Jhin. I think it's still more of a support leaning matchup. If you know who Aiki Pitako is, the Grandmasters, challenger tier level Jhin player, and they actually like the matchup of Jhin in Jinx in lane, and then out of lane they actually like Jinx into Jhin. So they, in their opinion, as a Jhin player, getting like someone else's opinion and perspective on it, Jhin wins the lane usually against Jinx. but Jinx wins the game outside of laning phase, like mid to late game against Jhin. And so in the laning phase, this is where this might even up a bit more. But out of laning phase, it's really unchanged, so that is more of a Jinx kind of a game anyways. And this is where, if you are Jinx and you're struggling against this champion, this is going to be where the window is going to open up more. Now, in their opinion, of course, if they play Jhin correctly, they'll probably still come out on top, but that's just something to note. Senna, passive crit damage reduction and crit chance per 20 souls decrease. Now, the R now collects myth wraiths on cast. I was thinking about that, right? Because there's certain abilities I think would be kind of cool if it did stuff like that. In the way, not exactly 1-1 comparison, but like how Lux, when she casts her Q and she lands it, if she ults, if they have the passive on them where they're like the shining, and the ult will proc it for the extra damage. It's kind of like that, right? If there's Maiths, yeah, cool words. Late night hours, here we go. If there's myths, wraiths that are dropped and the R shoots over them, she'll just get to collect them, which I think is kind of nice, just as a mechanic, right? But they're bringing Senna into the crit system by having her crits happen less, but hit even stronger than before. I wonder if they're also doing this because, and this is mainly opinionated from viewing like the LCS and Pro Play, a lot of the time, when they would play Senna, they would play her as like Feasting Senna or like Lethality Senna. And admittedly, even when I play Senna support, I would go for lethality just for like the earlier game damage and stuff like that too. It's like I'm counting on the ultimates instead of auto attacking. Like we have an auto attacker, we have an AD carry. That's not really my job. I could if I need to, but like if I can nail somebody with this ultimate, you know, dead center, it's gonna hurt a lot more. And I wonder if they're doing this change because, and like Jhin, right, the 35% is going down to 14, though the crits will deal instead of 130, 150. Basically, what I'm saying is I wonder if they want to try and move her away from that as a way to try and fix that issue that they've been having with Senna in Pro Play. Is they want to open up the crit build to feel a bit better when you do crit, so it rewards you for going crit basically, especially in the new system where again you're most likely going to be building 5 items and that's going to get you to 100% crit chance as well. They kind of want AD carries to kind of go full glass cannon if possible. So maybe that's what that's going to be about, which means in laning phase, you might not be, if you're getting bullied by Senna, one of the reasons could be because she's, you know, lethality Senna, early game damage Senna, things like that. And this is going to push her towards a later game build. So as a Jinx, who's also a later game champion, right? You'll both not do any damage to each other early, but also you might be able to actually fight a bit more. Every time the champion's getting nerfed, that's kind of my go-to answers. You might be able to fight a bit better in laning phase if you can't already, right? The idea is you're harassing them with the rockets, you're outranging them anyways, and if you can keep that up in a world where they have less damage on things like crit and base damage or whatever the case happens to be, usually you can win off of like small trades here and there that chip them down slowly. You don't want to go for like a huge all-in, like a Draven might try and run someone down with his W and his axes, right? That's not Jinx. Jinx does not have spinning rockets that she's just hurling off of people and stuff, right? That's a rework we're not going to see until 2025. But that being said, right, like that's the idea here is what I'm saying. Is like they want, I feel like that's where they're going with these changes, and in that case that means in laning phase you might have a bit more of a chance to kind of just go at Senna and kind of fight with her a bit. And we have to scroll a little bit because these aren't in alphabetical order like they always are, because then there's like mana pool adjustments for certain mana changes, the same way AD carries are getting changed. A quick note, there's a lot of champions that, some of which are AD carries, like Ezreal's in here, Corki, if you know AD carry Corki, I guess, on the rare occasion. There's a lot of champions getting mana adjustments to deal with the mana changes that they're doing. It's a really massive patch, and I don't want to make this episode too long, and I feel like I should. I feel like it's like, hey, if you don't watch the full episode, it's fine, because you got things to do, but I maybe should touch on some of everything, because there is a lot of things going down in this patch that could affect Jinx, or at least could get you ahead of the ball on Jinx. Like maybe what I should be doing with this episode is, instead of going over, which we're going to continue by the way, but instead of going over all these different changes like this, I should be going over kind of like all the preseason stuff, so then you can know it, and then as Jinx going into the game with your own game plan. Like for example, Twitch, the deadly venom damage and W slow now scale on AP. Contaminate's AP scaling now deals magic damage. Now some people might think this is silly, and I'm not gonna disagree with them so far. I will say two things. One, on the PvE, it turns out AP Twitch is actually kind of disgusting. Turns out. But two, this is kind of like in a broader thing that Riot's been doing for honestly a while now. You might remember when they kind of revived AP Shyvana. They kind of do want to allow alternative playstyles to exist for champions if it's healthy, right? One of the reasons reasons they killed off tank Echo is because they felt that wasn't healthy, not because they didn't like the idea of Echo being able to do tank things. Or if it would have been healthy, basically they would have kept it, and they felt like ultimately it wasn't, is which is why they got rid of it, not because it just existed, right? So there's a lot of champions, like we mentioned AP Shyvana and here AP Twitch, they want to be able to actually open up the ability for people to go, hey, I want to play AP Twitch either in a for fun mode or because in a composition, like maybe your last pick, everyone else picked 80 champions, the enemy's now locked in like things like Malphite, and you're like, hey, I don't want to deal with this, but I'm literally the 80 carry, so guess what, I'm playing AP Twitch because I don't want to play Kog'Maw. No one wants to play Kog'Maw. Who plays Kog'Maw? Answer me that. You can't. That's the problem. But that being said, on a more of a serious note, the idea is that we might see more changes like this going forward, not just on Twitch, but on really any champion they can get away with saying, hey, you like playing, say, Amumu in the jungle, and usually it feels like you can only win if you go tank Amumu really full out. Maybe Leandries, but basically tank. Maybe in the future we see them opening up like AP Amumu, like dive bomb, ult, blow up people up. That's basically what they want to do in a future where they feel like they can balance more alternative playstyles. So that might be something we see in the future. Here, though, the damage ratios on the Deadly Venom, which is the passive, is 3% AP per second. The slow cast, the Venom, is 6 AP now, and there's 33.3% AP on the Contaminate, which is the E. Now, in laning phase, even if you're going against the AP Twitch, which what I've also seen is people going like a mixed damage build Twitch instead, right? Like Rage Blade and stuff like that. In lane phase, those are all scaling kind of things. So even if they rush a Blade of the Ruined King early, that's still like an 80 kind of a thing. You're kind of still dealing with him in the same AP realm that you usually would be. If he's going full AP in the bottom lane, you might have a bit of an advantage. I'd say depending on your support matchup more so, because then his auto attacks aren't going to be scaling when he's backing and buying items, right? Like he's going to back and buy a Lost Chapter. That's not a BF sword. So your auto attacks when you back and get that BF sword, you're gonna love those trades more than he's gonna love those trades. Post 6, of course, with the ultimate, the Venom stack, and the proc and stuff, that could be a little bit of an issue. So post 6, I think it's a bit more up in the air. But early game, if for some reason you're going against the AP Twitch, you're actually going to have a little bit of an advantage. But if Twitch gets fed, he's going to destroy people, and it's going to be very, very disgusting. And I believe that's most of just the mainstay champion changes. We got stuff like this, right? Like because Victorious Lucian is going to be hitting the Rift, there are going to be people that are going to be playing Lucian. So I don't know if that means they're going to be good, but they're going to exist. You might see an uptick in Lucian picks. There's some other champions down here getting skins too. None of them really in the bottom lane. I think the Zac skin is kind of fire, to be honest. It looks a bit darker in the splash art than actually in the game, but I think that's actually a pretty neat skin. And that's most of those changes. Now, I did say we're going to be going over the mythic items themselves. So mythic items, again, the idea of this, these are very powerful items, but you can only buy one. You can't stack them. And the 80 carry ones are right up here. You have Gale Force, which is the one people were talking about, because in the Riot preview video, this showed off Jinx specifically in the video dashing, right? That's not something you see Jinx do unless she's getting excited, right? Like her success, her ability to be mobile is gated by some form of success unless you build this item. Because Gale Force gives marksmen champions a way to dodge high impact skill shots or aggressively finish off low health targets. So if you're going against an engaged champion, they engage on you, you have the reflexes, but your flash is down, but you have this, you can dash in a certain direction and maybe get out of it. The dash does have a cooldown though, so be aware of that as well. The cost is 3,400 gold. It's a pretty expensive item. The build path is Noon Quiver, Cloak of Agility, Pickaxe, and 625 gold. The attack damage is 55, the attack speed is 20, and the critical strike chance is also 20. But here's where it gets quote-unquote fun gameplay, if you will. The effects: Cloudburst active. Dash in target direction, firing 3 missiles at the lowest health enemy near your destination, prioritizing champions, but as we did a video on this a month ago when I was on the PvE, it will hit minions. So if you're fighting in a minion clump and the minions are lowest health and they're the closest, it'll try to prioritize champions, but there is a chance it could hit minions. It'll deal a total of 180 to 350 damage for levels greater than 10 through 18, and plus 45% bonus AD, and the magic damage increased against low health targets by up to 50% with a 90-second cooldown. It grants all other legendary items 3% movement speed, and we'll get into legendary items too for that matter. So basically the reason, some people have felt like this item's a little bit of a trap item, where on lower mobility champions like a Jinx and Kog'Maw and stuff like that, I know I joked earlier, you would want to build this item because you want that extra mobility in a game in a world where you feel like your champion's kind of fine, but there's a mobility creep. Even if Riot denied it, it does feel like champions have gotten quite a bit more mobile over the years. And that being said, like, some people would look at, well, maybe that just means Jinx and Kog'Maw stuff need a rework. Other people would argue, no, those champions are actually fine, but other things aren't fine. Here's the middle ground. We just give you this item that allows you to kind of have a little bit more mobility to kind of take care of yourself a little bit better. There you go. Obviously, I'm biased. I do think Jinx is actually fine for the most part, right? Like, the idea that when she gets brought up, even when she's meta and strong, that people can still go, hey, but, you know, she's a mobile, I can pick this champion, I can do this thing. I think that's like optimal balance against an AD carry that does a lot of damage like Jinx can, is the idea that in your head you'd still go, hey, but I could have maybe done this, I could have picked this, we could engage like this, Jinx lacks this, we still have ways we can go against even a 20-0 Jinx, right? If we have the right tools, she'll still die when we catch her versus like a Kai'Sa or oh my goodness, a Samira right now, things like that, right? So that's the idea though behind this item, and that's why some people think it's a bit of a trap item, because like, yeah, maybe, but also maybe not, because the thing is, if AD carries can build this, AD champions period can build this, other AD champions can build this. So already mobile AD champions can also build that item if they want to, and then just kind of negate your mobility. Like, you flash, they flash, you dash, well, they dash, and then they still catch you. So then, you know, what was the point? Well, meanwhile, this is an item right here, Kraken Slayer, that people like a bit better on Jinx right now. Now, some people do like, I'm not saying, by the way, just I should clarify, if you like Gale Force, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's why some people are cautious about it, because I feel like it might be negated by the fact that it's like not you know, ranged only, it's not AD carry only, so other things can buy it too if they need to. Kraken Slayer is an anti-tank item. Kraken Slayer allows a free-firing marksman to cut even the beefiest enemies down to size. So the base stats, 3,400 gold, non-quiver, cloak, pickaxe, etc. A lot of the same stats, except there's more AD, and there's more attack speed, because I believe up here was 20 attack speed and 20% crit chance, 25% attack speed, and then 60 attack damage over the 55. Now here's the effects though. Bring it down. Every third basic attack deals an additional 60 plus 30% bonus AD true damage, grants all other legendary items 10% attack speed. Basically, when you see a beefy tank, you want to build this, because these items are meant to be built early. So like, even before an Infinity Edge, you're supposed to build these items first. So if you see a lot of tanks on the enemy team, you want to build this first and use a true damage to coast your way into Infinity Edge and stuff like that. Even possibly foregoing Last Whisper for this item. And again, we played I don't want to self-promote too much, but we did play this for one of the Let's Talk Jinx episodes, actually, on the PPE as well. We went over all these items, and this item was something that could cut down towers too, because it actually does true damage not just to enemies, but also towers, turrets, and stuff like that as well. Every 3 attacks period. Baron, Dragon, all of them. It does that on every 3rd auto attack. So with Vayne and stuff, it's very fun, but on a Jinx, it's especially fun too. As long as you get to free fire, you will destroy these tanks, which that's the whole reason why you picked an AD carry to begin with, was to be a tank killer, right? That's how you bring the DPS to the team composition to DPS these items and these creatures and these enemy champions that you're supposed to, like Dragon, Baron, and enemy tanks. That's the idea. Now here's Immortal Shield Bow. This is for surviving burst. Immortal Shield Bow helps marksman champions survive burst damage and fight their way back from the brink. 3,400 gold, a lot of the same stats, but only 15% attack speed, only 50 damage, only 20% crit strike, but 12% life steal. And basically, when taking damage that will reduce your health below 30%, you gain a shield. Think of it like the Hextech shield or like the Phantom Dancer before they switched it back to the old Phantom Dancer, where you get a shield. Like it's like Steric's gauge for AD carries. And the idea is, hey, you see an assassin, assassins really annoy you. Instead of complaining to Riot, well, this is what Riot did. They gave you this item that will protect you. And originally, Lifeline wasn't what the name was, so you could stack this with other survivability items too. Lifeline, of course, is the thing that's in Hex Drinker and stuff like that, so you wouldn't build Hex Drinker if you built this, because it doesn't stack. But what you could do if you wanted to, since it does do, you know, it does even give you crit chance and some damage as well, and if you built this first and while you're building crit chance, you could still build other lifesteal items too to get extra lifesteal, like the Bloodthirster shield could go over this as well. You could build Guardian's Angel still as well, and also have this, so it makes it really hard to kill you, though it will take up your item slots, building things like that to survive assassins. So you have to decide if it's worth it, right? If you're protected enough, then you want to go for Kraken Slayer, actually, because even against assassins, like it just does a lot of damage, maybe even Gale Force. But if you're not having a lot of protection, no one's really protecting you. I had a game once, and I don't like blaming my teammates usually, because 99% of the chance, it really is my fault at the end of the day. But I did have one game where everyone on my team was engaged champions, and no one, like, they would all engage and be surprised when I was left behind and would get jumped. And it's like, well, in that situation, this item would have been nice, because then I could just be like, hey, if that's gonna keep happening, where all 4 of y'all are gonna just hard engage, like dive the backline, flash, dashing and all, and I'm just gonna be back here by myself, well, okay, I'll just protect myself. It's fine. It's cool, right? I will briefly mention some of the other items, just because we have Sunfire Aegis, like for tanks now, going to take items, ramping damage. Basically, it's like the regular Sunfire cape, but the longer you're in combat, the more damage you'll do by burning people. Frostfire Gauntlet, speaking of tank echo, you'll stick to people a lot more with this if you want to build this one instead. Turbo Chem Tank, think like Scion Ult or Singe Ultimate, where if you're a tank and you want to engage, here you go. Duskblade, we did a video about this because we did the assassin items on Jinx. You get to go invisible. It's basically like a lot of the same stuff for the base stats and stuff like that, but when you get a kill, you go invisible for 1.5 seconds, and if you get another kill, it refreshes that and you go invisible again immediately, so that's pretty cool. Eclipse is more for dueling, so basically Assassin's weaknesses is supposed to be tanks and stuff like that, and they decided, well, what if Assassins could actually fight tanks? So that's lovely. Prowler's Claw, this one's like the least sin item. You might have heard about it, where like it gives you like a little bit of a dash to a certain like target, I believe it was, and so it allowed like least sin to jump behind somebody a lot easier to insect them. It's basically you to get up close and personal and amplify your damage and stuff like that. Mage items, so you have Anti-Tank, Landry's Anguish, Landry's Torment, like upgrade and stuff like that, Luden's Echoes, and Luden's Tempest, more burst damage and stuff like that. Everfrost is a slow and a cone. It's an active ability, and if they're in the middle of the cone, they actually get stunned. You know, great. Rocket Belt, which is a proto belt. Riftmaker, which is like has Omni Vamped, which is mages and tankier magic damage dealers can dominate fights that ramping damage. So if you're like a damage over time mage, you're not really a burst mage. You're a mage that wants to be like a Swain or something like that. You probably want this instead, because this will benefit you that way. Night Harvesters for multi-kills. It's a great tool for magic damage dealing assassins to fight, and bruisers actually, who want to work their way through an entire team instead of taking out one target. So you know, if you just want to play a skirmisher instead, just play a skirmisher, dang it. Why not assassins? Maybe be good at your job. Assassinate a target very well. That's just me being salty. You could ignore that. Basically, that's what that is. If you want to kind of team fight with an assassin, you know, because to be fair, I know I was joking. I was being a little salty there. We've all had that one game with an assassin for one reason or another. Whether we're playing as the assassin or we're playing with one, where it's like, hey, the reason they're not doing their job right now is because they're waiting for the cooldowns, their ultimate to be back up. But a team fight's kind of breaking out right now, and they kind of need to do something, right? Like Katarina can't jump in and ult right now because it's not on cooldown, or Zed can't go after the AD carry because it's not on cooldown. But a fight like is out of our control, it's just broken out. They need to be able to kind of do something. So especially if they're magic damage, that is. So here you go. To be completely fair, right? Trinity Force, you know, dueling, the good old Trinity Force stuff. A Gore Drinker, which I believe this is, you can come back from the brink of death, right? Like, the effect of this one is like, you can restore your health while you're fighting, as long as you're not dying, I believe. They're really clutch, like, low-key plays. While Stride Breaker, meanwhile, is more of an engage tool, like lunge a short distance with attacking enemies nearby, yeah, stuff like that. Divine Sundeer, that's not Sundeer. I can't read. Anti-tank, basically. So basically, if you're a bruiser and you basically steal a bit of the health of the person you're fighting, I believe. Yep, that's what it says down here. These are very, very short TLDRs, by the way. Shirelli's Battle Song, so that's team mobility. It's the same kind of there. Locket of the Iron Solari, just upgraded, you know, item thing right there. Moonstone Renewal, which is like a healing over time, so just on constant heals that ramp up over a fight. We've gone into the support items, by the way. Imperial Mandate, which is an ally burst. Use your CC to call the shots as you mark your enemies to be cut down by your team. That's kind of neat, right? And there you go. That's a lot of the mythic items. And now we're going to the stat updates, by the way, really quick. Cooldown reduction is now Haste. Jinx doesn't really have a bunch of that to worry about, but in case you're playing other AD carries that do, that is a thing to worry about. Some other new legendary items that you might want to be a little bit interested in. The Collector, burst damage. And it does attack damage, so it's an AD item. The Collector offers marksman champions a more aggressive option when they find themselves facing squishy foes. So there you go. Navari? Quick Blades, reduce cooldowns. Navari Quick Blades allows crit heavy builds to scale their ability casting well. So again, for Jinx, who's a marksman champion and also a crit heavy builder, these might be something you might want, but we're not ability casting. So I think this is more like a Lucian kind of a thing, but maybe you're ambitious on a Jinx, so there you go. Force of Nature is back. Helps turn tanks into swift behemoths. where it gives them a cost of under 3,000. It looks like magic resist and movement speed, and taking damage from abilities guarantees 6 movement speed and 4 magic resist for 5 seconds, which stacks, by the way. Serpent's Fang, which is like anti-shielding, so it helps assassins strike back against shield-heavy compositions. Again, instead of actually their weakness of being, you know, bad against tanky comps, let's just help assassins actually be able to deal with tanky comps, because that's, you know, makes sense. Okay. Horizon's Focus, which is a damage amp for, I believe, AP champions. Let's see, Cosmic Drive, Ability Haste, we talked about that. It's replacing cooldown reduction, and it works a little bit differently than cooldown reduction. Demonic Embrace, Sustained Damage, a new helm for those bruisers and battle mages who want to get into the thick of things, bulk up, and deal excellent damage over time. Again, Swain comes to mind, maybe even a Mumu if they ever kind of do like a tanky, a half AP, half tanky build. Here's an anti-armor thing for, I believe, caps off assassin builds. Okay, so basically there's a lot of anti-armor for assassins. And I think the reason for that, like salt aside, I know I was doing that, I'm sorry, but I think it also has to do with the idea of like when you build lethality, you can still feel like you fall off a little bit, and that's because some people might even build like one armor item, and that feels like it kind of negates a lot of the burst damage you were kind of doing, and so you do need to actually build some like anti-armor kind of stuff. And do you build a Last Whisper? Currently the answer is yes, right? You might build a Ghost Blade, Dust Blade, one of those other ones, a Last Whisper, the cooldown boots, and then maybe you either go a final like just straight up damage item, or you go the last lethality item. And this is kind of more of a, well, what if assassins need like that anti-heal tank, but they don't want to go Last Whisper because Last Whisper doesn't feel like, it feels like either it's overkill, the calculations doesn't work because they don't have a full armor item, it's an arm guard, whatever the case is. I think that's the idea. I don't know exactly, don't quote me. Some of you like to quote me on stuff like I'm some sort of genius. Do not do that. Silvermere Dawn, remove crowd control. So there you go. It's like a cleansing option for fighters. So like if you're diving into like as a Jarvan or a Vi or whatever, there you go. Chempunk Chainsword, anti-healing, Grievous Wound option for fighters and assassins. This is one I'm okay with because Grievous Wounds is something I think should be available more often. I'm one of those people. I'm sorry if it makes me sound just salty or bitter or bronze, but at the same time, towards the second half of this last season, there was too much healing in the game relative to the answers for that healing. So it looks like this is an option for fighters and assassins too, because like at least with 80 carries we can go Executioner's Calling into the other Last Whisper item. Mages can maybe go Morella Nemicon, which as someone that plays mages too, never felt effective against healing, I'm not gonna lie. I felt more effective building Leandri's and Ryla's Crystal Scepter and using that burn slow combo on healing targets instead of Grievous Wounds, just putting that out there. But it also felt like for like fighters and stuff, it's like I guess I could build Executioner's Calling on Vi, but it doesn't feel right. I could build the Thornmail on Vi and go like more of a bruiser beefy Vi. That also doesn't feel right. This is more of like a, oh, what if we actually give you an actual like, you know, Executioner's Calling into a Warhammer and kind of Ruby Crystal, like an actual item. That kind of can feel good. Chemtech Purifier, anti-healing, Grievous Wound option for support champions. Again, so if you're like a Soraka and you want some anti-heal, here you go. The irony is that you're Soraka. So like Soraka, Sona, Seraphine, all those healing people using an anti-healing item, something about that makes me laugh. It makes me laugh for some reason, and I think it's just the irony of it. It's like, man, I want to heal, but screw you. You don't get to heal jack squat. I don't know. Staff of Flowing Water, buff spellcasters, so new item for enchanters, and lets you support mages, carries, and zoom around. Here's my hot take. If I have a mage support, I want them to blow people up. I don't necessarily like playing against mage supports, but that's like why people play mage supports. They want to blow people up. They want to possibly carry themselves. And I just want to see the win screen at this point with the way the season's been. Just give me the W. If I have to get carried, I'm fine with that. I'll take a back seat. I don't always have to carry every game. That's fine. Holds control wards. So stirring ward stone, it holds control wards. So you need one more in the pocket. You want extra wards? Not when I play. People never ward, ever. Doesn't matter what elo I watch either. Like no one wards as often as they should. It's really weird. Watchful ward stones, you can hold more control wards, basically holding control wards. And now, last but not least, in the video out, there's some items that we know of and love that Jinx might build that have been updated. Mortal Reminder, no longer grants armor penetration, now builds some zeal, now offers improved Grievous Wounds. So this is an example of what I was talking about. This, like, assassins can't build this anymore if they did, because it doesn't offer armor penetration anymore. It builds out of a zeal item actually, but it still does give you grievous wounds, which is kind of interesting because I feel like there's a lot of tanks that have healing that we kind of want the both in the same. But if you're building Kraken Bowslayer, it is a little bit of overkill, so I can understand why they did this. But this is the reason why assassins, like I said, all the salt aside, they would do this, is because, yay, guess what? This doesn't armor penetrate anymore. Mortal Reminder is its own item basically that has crit in it now and grievous wounds. So that's actually a little bit of an interesting kind of a thing. Going to his Rage Blade, Jinx doesn't really do the ramping build unless they open up maybe her AP path a bit for mixed damage like a Kog'Maw. But just in case you're playing against a Kog'Maw and stuff like that, they even mentioned Kog'Maw by name in here. This will be an item that it now grants on-hit damage based on critical strike chance, but you can't crit. No longer grants stacking attack speed, no longer grants attack damage, ability power, or penetration. It's basically, I don't know. It's going to be a weird item. I'm going to have to see it in action more if I can really give you a good option from the PvE, because the PvE is kind of wild. I don't feel like giving you an opinion from the PvE because it feels like it'll be wrong. The Phantom Dancer no longer has Lifeline, grants ghosting, movement speed, and bonus attack damage after consecutive attacks. Basically, it feels like what they did with Phantom Dancer is they brought back old Phantom Dancer, where the basic attacks give you movement speed. And there used to be a time where if you had the Boot and Chance, where he's the thing, you remember that? Boot and Chance, Journal of Justice people, do you remember that too? We're getting old now. You could build that and you could kite for days on your own with old Phantom Dancer. And it basically kind of feels like that's where they've gone back to with this. It's even back to being 2,900 gold and stuff like that. Basically, yeah, when you're kiting stuff, Spectral Waltz, you'll get movement speed. When you're kiting tanks, minions, even whatever the case is, it's a pretty good item to build. It's not really a defensive option anymore though, however, for like the shielding stuff and things like that. Lord Dominic's Regards now has critical strike chance, deals additional damage against high health targets. So this item, meanwhile, is still the OG Last Whisper from years ago, and it looks like it's still going to be the Last Whisper item. But it's also going to have crit chance in it, because they want, basically with 80 carries, in short, they want every item you build to have crit in it. They were kind of sick of the whole you feel bad at all stages of the game, you're trash and stuff like that, all those complaints. And they're like, hey, well, if we give you crit on everything, maybe then you'll feel a bit better about stuff. You won't feel like you're sacrificing crit for anything. You get to have that and crit too. There you go. Essence Reaver now builds out of Sheen and has a Spell Blade passive. Still gives crit chance, but also Ability Haste. I think it's more of a Lucian item than a Jinx item. Here we go. Increased critical strike chance now scales with critical strike chance. So the thing with Infinity Edge, what it does now is it gains an additional 8% critical strike damage per 20% critical strike chance, max at 40. It does 70 damage, still builds out of the same stuff. It's still 3,400 gold and gives you critical strike chance of 20%. So basically what this means is the more crit items you build, the more critical strike damage it'll do per 20% critical strike chance. So you'll start with 20, when you get to like 40, for example, you'll do 8%, your crits will do 8% more damage, 60 will mean 16% more damage, etc, etc, which is why it's at 170% damage instead of the 200, because it also will then go up. So you'll start at the 175%, and if I remember right from the PvE video, what will end up happening is by, max stacks, when you get 100, that's an additional 32%. So instead of being at 200%, 175 plus the 32%, I believe is roughly what, 207? My math is terrible, I'm sorry, that's probably not right. That'd be 25. 30, no, maybe it's around 207. So it's actually an increase of 7% damage late game if you get full 100% crit chance, if I'm recalling that correctly. I could be wrong. It's part of why I make these videos. I want you to kind of talk about that. Muramana, you build a bonus now applies to abilities in addition to stacks. Archangel Staff and then Sereth's and Braiths have been updated with their, as you see, profile stuff, but the AP increased and no longer grants Ability Haste. The mana increase now grants mana per AP. Lichbane, which looks way different, but also is Spellblade damage and cooldown increased. Blade of the Ruined King movement speed active is now a passive, because they wanted to switch a lot of the actives to passives. Jinx doesn't build it. She had a point where she built this item with Glacial Augment, by the way. That was a thing for a hot second. Black Cleaver now does missing health damage against fully stacked targets. Ravenous Hydra. Now I want to talk about this because Nathield, by the way, hit me up, and it turns out the AoE on the Hydra items also synergizes with Jinx and her AoE on both Runon's Hurricane and her rockets, and is actually pretty disgusting. And I don't know if Riot, because it's not, as you notice, it's not melee only anymore, and I wonder if Riot's gonna fix that. Use that while you can, by the way. Just a hint, there you go. Titanic Hydra in there, Wit's End, Maul of Mormortius, Lifeline, Shield's now been increased, so if you really need that magic damage protection, you can go for that instead. Death Stance has Omnivamped in it. Steric's Gauge is the base shield now scales. Randuin's Omen active now also reduces enemies AD and crit damage, so not just crit damage, but also your AD as well. Frozen Heart, damage taken from passive attacks. Passively reduces damage. Gargoyle Stone Plate, you know, that's a thing that exists. Passive change to increase damage on immobilized enemies, so if you're CC'd, that's a lot better. It's like Fiddlesticks or like Fear or something, that could be cool. Thornmail, damage reduced and now applies grievous wounds upon immobilizing an enemy. So a lot of tank items have been updated so that immobilizing people increases their effects a bit more. Morella Nelicron is a thing that exists that I always feel bad building. Here we go. This is the last part I want to talk about too, is some item and changes. Rapid Fire Cannon. The total cost is going up 100, the attack speed is going up by 5, and the critical strike chance is going down from 25 to 20. Storm Razor, the cost is going down 500, so that's pretty good. The damage is going down 10, the attack speed is going down, looks like 15, and the crit chance is going down 20. That's not so good. Runon's Hurricane is the one I really want to get to, where the total cost is going up to 3,400 gold. The build path is going Pickaxe, Zeal, Dagger, and 125 or 1,025 gold after. But now, this Zeal item previously will now give you 25 attack damage. The critical strike is going down to 20, but the movement speed is also going down by 2%, and the bolt damage is going from 40% total attack damage to 40 to 70% total attack damage once you get on the other side of level 10 and then 10 through 18. So it'll give you more total attack damage late game. It'll give you slightly less movement speed and slightly less crit chance. That's because everything in their mother is giving you crit chance, so it's fine. And it also will give you attack damage. So there you go. That's one of the things I kind of wanted to end the video on. Now, by the way, Bloodthirster has crit chance in it, in case you thought I was joking, because people build crit, maybe they may build this late game when they need life steal. It now has crit chance in it. Everything that AD carries build and want to build has crit chance in it. So if you're kind of curious, hey, I'm an AD carry, you know, I'm a Jinx, should I be building this item? Does it have crit in it? Absolutely. Then that's exactly what they want you to build. Does that mean that's what you're gonna build exactly? We'll have to see as this goes on. This has been too long of a video, but I had to cover some of everything. I'm sorry, but thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, the actual subscribe button. But I don't know which video will be next, because I can have a lot of kinks. So till this time, take care. ggGetJinxed. Thank you for watching, and enjoy pizza responsibly. Also, what is the change you're most excited about in the preseason, Jinx or in total? Comment